Let's talk about stuff you just talked about, trade up versus trade back, because I'm very interested to hear everybody's thoughts on this. The Steelers have been given or predicted to move both ways. It's been matches with the Arizona Cardinals, the Buffalo Bills, the Dallas Cowboys was yesterday. Then you're talking about Mark Caboli saying, oh, well, they can move up, and that's probably the most likely scenario. If there's any scenario that they move up to go get an offensive tackle. Steven, let's start with you. Trade up versus trade back scenario here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What side do you lean, and what side makes the most sense for the Steelers here?
I lean trade back. I don't know if this is what I actually don't think that this is actually what they're going to do. I don't think they're really considering trading back at all. I think Kaboli might actually be pretty spot on. I think if they're doing anything, they're trading up. I think they should trade back, though. I think that would be a very prudent move for them, just because I think this is a year where they could use as many draft picks as they possibly can get in rounds 2 and 3. To be quite honest with you, and they've already got 3 there, so they're like mostly set. Like, I'm fine if they don't trade back, but I think they can really help themselves a ton by trading back. I just think of their top 3 needs, and I think these 3 needs are places where you need another starter going. You need someone at this position to be a starter going into 2024. That's tackle, center, and wide receiver. You need to get someone who's capable of starting in this draft, it seems like. And I just think by the time you get through rounds 1 and 2 and you use pick 20, you use pick 51, it's going to be really slim pickings in rounds they're not picking until the middle of round 3 and the end of round 3. That worries me a little bit if you're trying to get starting caliber players at each of those positions. So I really want them to load up on picks earlier. I want to see if they can move up in round 3. And I think the more, if you trade back, and especially if you're trading back, with a team like the Bills or a team like Dallas, or it's even Arizona, like, who has a million draft picks in kind of those later rounds, like, you have a chance to build a little capital after day 1, and potentially, and even like not only just build what you've got in rounds 3, because that's I don't know, for most of these situations you're probably gonna, if you're trading back, you're ending up with a round 3 pick, but if you give yourself some more capital, you can consider trading up into the top half of round 2.
Yeah.
Like, you can give yourself a second chance to land, a Zach Frazier or a Lad McConkey, depending on what you do. Like, there are better options for you, and you can address some more of these immediate needs that you have if you just kind of build your draft capital on for day 2. So that's why I'm pro trade back. I think that you have a bunch of teams that'd be really interested, a bunch of teams that you could put some pressure on to give you a good return, and then you build another really strong class that you could build on right away.
Yeah, before I give my opinion, Nick, I want to hear yours. Trade up versus trade back.
Trade back. For me, I think trading up puts you in a position where you cannot address like certain needs like corner, and I don't think they want to leave that out. Like, especially if it's going to be an interesting spot because day 3 is where the depth kind of drops off in the draft, and you'll see positions like corner really start to get thinner. There's a lot of guys that just did not test as strongly as you would hope for, versus like last year's class where you guys like Darius Rush going in like the 5th round, who were 4.36 type athletes and had some promising aspects to their film. I do think that they're going to want to potentially entertain getting another pick as opposed to going up and trying to get like that blue chip, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I agree with both you guys. I think that if you trade up, you're giving up way too much in a draft where you have specific needs. If this was just like whoever get the best player available, you're down to one spot, cool. But the Steelers left themselves with 4 ginormous needs. Not like, well, we could just, no. The only one that you could, okay, well, we could just is probably left tackle. And that's like, it's barely an, we could just. It's not good enough. You got to go out and get a center. You got to go out and get a corner. You got to go out and get a wide receiver. You got to go out and get an offensive tackle. If you don't do all those 4 things, you literally have nobody to replace them. Like, if the Steelers go offensive line in rounds 1 and 2, that's great, except for the fact that they literally don't have a starting slot corner and Calvin Austin is their wide receiver 2. It doesn't make any sense. And if you're thinking wide receiver trade, great. And I think that that's on the table after the NFL draft, but I still think that they want a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 2B. I don't think that that's off the table for them. You have to have as many draft picks as humanly possible. I also think that at 20, the options are going to be so wide, but at the same time, none of them are going to be like, you have to draft this guy, that they could move back with some ease. Like you could look at the situation and say, all right, yeah, we could get an Armarius Mims, but if we trade back, chances are Tyler Guyton's still going to be there, or Jackson Powers Johnson's going to be on the board, or Graham Barton's still going to be available. There's just no need to, I don't know, kind of like make the move forward for somebody when you'll have the options moving back. I will say that if offensive tackles start flying off the board and you're sitting there and you're going, okay, well, we're not going to get anybody, maybe you consider it, but I don't think it makes some sense.
We were asking Nick about his top prospects for the Steelers in round 1. And at basically every name that he mentioned, we were like, is that a reach at 20? Like, that's the thing. Everyone is either going to feel, I think everyone that the Steelers could pick at 20, you're going to be like, that's a little bit of a reach. We could have gotten someone just as good at, 24 if we trade with the Cowboys, 28 if we trade with the Bills, 27 if we trade with Arizona. Like the idea that like it's not a disaster if you miss on Mims in the first round, because you could take, I don't know his name, but the Yale tackle or in round 2 somewhere. You could get, Cedric Van Pran like in the 3rd or 4th round. Like, I don't know. There are so like the fact that they have so many needs. Like I saw someone say the other day, like if you're going best player available at 20 or somewhere else in the draft, then you can't address needs. I'm like, I don't think that's true. I think they have too many needs where, to the point where, like if you're taking best player available, the odds that you hit on a need that you have is pretty high. When you have 4 positions that you need. So I'm not worried at all about like, I don't know, missing on one of these prospects that's going to be available at 20, because 4, 5, 6, 7 picks later, if the Steelers are there and they trade back, there's going to be someone worth taking at that spot.
Yeah, I agree. Nick, let me ask you this to kind of round out this conversation here. What are you do not trade back guys that realistic guys at 20? Do you have any of them?
So you're asking me guys I would not want them to pick in the trade back scenario.
No, guys that if the Steelers are sitting there at 20, realistic guys that if they're sitting there at 20, you do not make a move. You draft that guy before you move backwards.
I mean, I would that one's really interesting. I would say it's someone like Troy Fautanu from Washington, because he really fits like what they would be wanting in an offensive tackle. I think what Fautanu brings to the table, he is one of the most fluid players. He actually reminds me quite a bit of Zach Tom. I was a pretty big fan of Zach Tom coming out of Wake Forest. And you watch him in pass protection, he is just so silky smooth. He uses independent hand usage. He's ready for what guys throw at him. And I really love that aspect to his game. I think someone like him, or potentially JC Latham, if he ends up falling that far. I think Latham probably ends up going like earlier than people expect. But if Fautanu for some reason fell, I would fully like want to stay at pick 20. I don't want to get out of that spot. He also has potential, 5 position versionality as well.
I was going to say.
I don't know. If you have 5 positions, do you have one? Like that's. I don't buy that whole like he can play all 5 positions, man. Like I don't think anyone can do that.
Okay, so to elaborate on that is the projectional aspect of his game. He is not quite, he doesn't have the experience of playing those positions. I actually don't think he fits nearly as well at guard as people say. I just don't think like his style of play, like his independent hand usage, mirror guys the way he does, works best at guard. I think it works better at like center and offensive tackle. And I think those would be good spots. Dane, I don't remember what I think it was Daniel Jeremiah said that there is one team out there that has Troy Falatanu as their top center in this draft, and it would be kind of interesting if it ended up being the Steelers in that regard, because they have the need at center. But I mean, Falatanu is that guy. I think is just a slam dunk pick at 20.
That's very interesting because I've been not critical, but he's been a guy that I'm like, I don't know if he's like in the, I don't know if I'd trade up for him. I don't know if I'd pass on him at 20. So it's very interesting to hear that, especially because I looked at it the same way Steven did, is where are you going to play this guy? He might be not the greatest tackle, and then you double dip at center, and then you got issues there. Or what's going to go on there? I don't know. Maybe. I could see his name. I mean, the Steelers have interest in him. And if you could bring somebody in there and then spark the conversation of where are they going to play on the offensive line, I think that's as interesting as it gets for a first-round pick, especially a pick that you have to make.